Imhotep, and welcome to another episode of the Kemetic Storytellers. It's been a while since our last episode, but we're back once again with a new story to tell. Today's tale is not focused on the gods, but rather on our connection with others, both those living and those who have gone before us. The Ka Temple of Nebti. Written by Shefytbast. Voiced by Pa Netcher, Reverend Rahari, and Mose.
The traveler arrived at the small village some time before sunset. Quite pleased with himself for reaching the day's stopping place so early, yet also fatigued from his long walk, he ordered a pot of beer from the innkeeper and then seated himself outside to refresh himself and to enjoy the cool breezes of the late afternoon. As he relaxed there, he spotted a stealthy movement in the weeds on the far side of the road. It was a cat, small and lean, dust brown against the dusty earth, its darker stripes like bars of lengthening shadows along its body. From its mouth, a puff of feather down and limp wings dangled, the body of a tiny bird. The cat slunk alongside the road, wary and watchful, moving more quickly at any sign of approach from man or beast. Opposite the inn, it turned to climb up onto the bank of the roadside, and from there it sprang onto the top of a low, squarish stone. It laid the little bird down on the stone, nudged it once as if to be sure that it wouldn't move, and then turned away, dropping with astonishingly fluid grace to the ground. Curving its back, it rubbed its head and body against the stone, arching upwards as if into some affectionately caressing hand, before moving a short distance away and sitting down to groom himself. The man knew only a little of cats, but he thought it must be rather remarkable that this skinny beast would leave its prey lying on the bare stone where any other creature could make off with it instead of devouring it right away. He was a historian by trade, but he had an interest in all the many wonders of this land, from the strange customs of its people to the peculiarities of its creatures, and he knew that cats were considered particularly special and revered. Despite his weary legs, he rose to take a closer look at the stone, bringing his beer pot with him. As he took his first step onto the road, that cat fled into the weeds like a flash of shifting sunlight on the ripples of the great river. It reappeared in an instant, leaping to the top of the neighboring wall where it crouched, watching him with taut, fixed attention. The stone itself was entirely unremarkable, with no markings of any kind, only a slight depression in the top, as if it had been worn away over many years. The bird lay in the very center of the hollow, a delicate drift of gray and black, its minuscule claws curled tight. As the traveler turned away from the stone, frowning in his perplexity, he noticed a ragged old man leading a mule, who had paused to watch him. Seeing that he had the traveler's attention, the man raised his hand in cheerful salute.
"Welcome, stranger,"
the man said in awkward but passable Greek.
"I can see that you've been wondering about the mystery of this stone. If you have a moment, let me tell you the tale. That was once the doorstep of a tiny, half-ruinous hovel. An old woman lived there, all alone. She survived on what little she could grow or gather for herself, but mainly on the charity of her neighbors. They were happy to give her a bit of bread or a jar of oil from time to time, for she was a willing, good-hearted woman, gladly helping out whenever anyone needed an extra hand at some small task. And she always had a kind word for a child, or a few moments to cobble together a toy out of some old rags or string and a bit of wood. But most of all, she was good to the cats of the village. She would share her little bit of food with them, and she would pull thorns from their paws and tend their hurts, and she would give shelter to them whenever they needed. The cats all came to know her and to trust her, and the queens would bring their litters of kittens to be held by her, and to play kitten games before her door. So her life was as pleasant as it might be, despite her poverty. with the good regard of her neighbors and the companionship of the cats. But sometimes she was sad and afraid, thinking of the life to come when she had departed into the West. For there was nobody to remember her and to make offerings for her ka. She had no children, and for all that her neighbors looked kindly upon her, they had their own parents and ancestors to tend to. And even though they were better off than she was, they were still poor themselves. And so she would be greatly troubled, fearing the utter end of her existence, especially when she felt the cold grip of age creeping onto her. But then the cats would rub up against her legs and hands, purring, and the kittens would tumble over each other, making her laugh, and she would forget about her fears for the moment. One day the old woman died at last, and her body was laid to rest in a nameless grave. And then a real wonder came to pass, for the great goddess Bast, mistress of heaven, preeminent in the field of the god, instructed the hearts of the cats that the woman had tended with such love, so that they brought a portion of their kills and laid them down as caw offerings at the woman's door. And the mother cats taught this to their kittens, and they to theirs, on, through all the generations, even until today. Yet, cats cannot speak the name of the departed, even if they know it, but people can and do. And because of the miracle of the cats, the people recalled the woman's kindness, and so the woman's story has been told, and her name has been remembered.
The man's voice strengthened and became resonant, as if he were an orator declaiming,
"This is the Ka Temple of Nepti, daughter of Ipu, beloved of the children of Bast, true of voice."
Looking sidelong at the traveler, the man grinned, sly and wise as a jackal.
"The story is quite true, honored stranger. They say that she lived over 200 years ago, during the rule of the Assyrians. But a man or woman of good heart, who shows kindness, compassion, and charity, will continue to live forever in the beautiful West, because they do what the gods love."
Thoughtful and distracted, the traveler placed a few coins in the old man's outstretched hand, a very generous amount, but it had been a good story. The man saluted him once more, then turned and with his mule went off along the street, his voice rising in a snatch of song. The traveler looked again at the stone, and then, on impulse, although it was not his land, nor his custom, nor a woman of his people, he moved forward and poured a small amount of his beer into the hollow, which was rather like the carved basin of the offering tables that he had seen in the temple sanctuaries of Heliopolis.
"For your Ka, Nepti, daughter of Ipu,"
he murmured. Straightening, he glanced back toward the wall. The cat was still there, sitting upright now, its tail curled elegantly around its paws. The slant of the setting sun caught its eyes, and they blazed gold and lambent as fire. In another moment, it had whirled and leaped down, vanishing behind the wall.